introduce my friend and author, Frank Savage, who wrote The Savage Way, and he's about to talk to you about that. Frank?
Thank you very much, Mike. That was a very, very gracious and maybe not fully deserved introduction, but I like it nevertheless. And first, before we start talking about the book, I just want to ask everybody to take a minute for us to just remember this terrible tragedy that befell Newtown, Connecticut yesterday, and that therefore befell Connecticut and the whole world. The mayor and I were talking about this, and we can only describe what happened as being unimaginable, outside of the realm of our thinking of things that you would attribute to the human race. And all of us, many of us in this room are parents, so I know that it hits us doubly hard because we can really sympathize with the parents. And also, as Governor Malloy said yesterday in one of his speeches, is that even those kids and those parents who were lucky enough to have their kids escape the shooting, those kids will be permanently scarred. And so that just take a couple of minutes to ask everybody to please take a moment to say a prayer for all of those people in Newtown. So I really want to thank all of you all for coming here. I do want to especially thank my friend, our mutual friend, John Malazzi, and Mike, thank you very much again for agreeing. I'd also like to thank the University of Connecticut, Stamford, for agreeing to let us host this event in this beautiful building. We have a special bond to this school because our son, Frank Savage, where are you, Frankie? In the back there is a student here. And he loves it. So that we have a very, very strong relationship. I also see that my son, Antoine, who just moved in, he's another Stanford product, so he's here. So that, we've got a lot of our family here, and of course, the person who needs no introduction, but who really put all of this together for me is my wife, Lolita. When they heard about my mother, that was all they wanted to talk about, as you can see from this thing, which really made me feel good.
36 past the hour. Here with us now, Chairman of Savage Holdings, LLC, and Chairman Emeritus of his alma mater, Howard University, Frank Savage. Frank is out now with the new book, The Savage Way, Successfully Navigating the Waves of Business and Life.
Well, the Savage Way is always having a positive outlook on life and believing in yourself. And these types of characteristics were instilled in me by my mother, who was a single woman who came up from North Carolina with twins. And she set off to make her mark in the world.
She reinvented herself, right?
She reinvented herself, and she became a very successful businesswoman, and she instilled certain principles in my sister. I have a twin sister, Frances, and myself. That was number one, always believe in yourself, have a lot of confidence. Don't shirk away from a challenge, but also recognize opportunities when they come. Also, honesty and integrity. And lastly, I think that she really taught me that you have to put the customer first.
The basic message is the core human message. You know, the importance of parents, the importance of mother, the importance of preparing your kids to go out into the world and be successful, the importance of ethics, the importance of hard work. These were all the principles that our mother put into Frances and myself. These were the things that were important, and the fact that the program, this is known as a very conservative program, but that's what they want to talk about. So it just shows that that human element is important. And what I try to do in The Savage Way is to take the reader on my life's journey and show, as the mayor just said, the manifestation of those core principles in literally every single phase of my life. Through the great times when things were going perfect. We all had a lot of money, it was a lot of fun. You know, how do you handle that type of thing? How do you manage that? How do you manage it? How do you keep yourself grounded? The times when you have a crisis. And I had one of the biggest crises of my life when I was on the board of Enron for only 2 years. And I said, why is this happening to me? I just got here. But it didn't matter. I was visible. So, you know, I got plastered all over the newspapers. One thing I say I will never forget how my friends at Stamford stood behind me during that phase. I will never forget that. I will never forget that big event that we had where all of my friends stood up and clapped for me and said they supported me. And I had that with a lot of people who knew me because they knew I was incapable of doing anything that would take down the company. But in any event, you know, I had to come through that. What got me through that? What got me through that was that I had nothing to hide. I had nothing to hide. So ultimately, I was cleared of it. 5 terrible years, but I came through it. But again, honesty and integrity. The truth will set you free. Hard work. One thing that I've always said is that I'm never always the smartest guy in the room. I know that. There are a lot of people smarter than me, but there are very few people who can work harder than I do. Because I used to watch my mother go into her beauty parlor at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I would pick her up sometimes between 10 and 12 o'clock at night. And she would come back in the house, and she would fall on, hey you, what's happening, my brother? She would fall on that bed, and just out, she was out. So this is a kind of example that she set for me. So any opportunity that I had, I was always ready to take it. I remember once when I was here in Stamford, I got introduced to the sport of sailing. I had never sailed a day in my life, not a day in my life. But somehow I got exposed to it through a guy who lived here in Stamford by the name of Tabor Bolden. And he took me out on his sailboat, and somehow the wind, the water and all, it just captivated me. Ultimately, I decided that I really wanted to take up sailboat racing. I took it up right here in Stamford, Connecticut. I went into sailboat racing, had never raced before, but I'd already had about 6 or 7 years of practice with this guy. And I decided I wanted to get to the top. And I did. And so people said, well, how did you do this? I said, well, first thing, I got the right people around me. People who knew what they were doing, because I didn't know anything. The Middle East one day, the next day I'm in Japan, the next day I'm in Africa, the next day I'm back in New York, then I'm in Europe. But wherever I went, I had to get people to believe in me. I had to go into the room. We were talking about this earlier, the mayor and I. Go into that room. My mother used to say, stand tall, look them straight in the eye, and shake their hands. First thing you want to do is make people believe in you. After discussing this with some of my colleagues at Howard, that it was something that I needed to share. To share not only with African Americans, but share with people all around the world, because I think these core values apply to everything. So as you go through The Savage Way, it's not a professorial book. I'm not a professor, I'm a businessman. So I try to write it in a way that is exciting to people. When you talk about my going to the Middle East in the middle of a war to visit with the Saudi Arabian Monetary Agency and coming out with a $500 million mandate to manage money, or you talk about me going to Japan, you know, where I had to deal with the long-term credit bank and where I could raise another $1 billion, but then turning around and coming back home during the period when black businesses were being built, I left that world that I loved so much and came back home to try to help black businesses get started. And I'm very proud today of the businesses that got started and the people who did well, like Reginald Lewis, who bought a $1 billion company, but he worked for me first. You know, I'm glad that I was able to act as a catalyst for that kind of change. And when I worked with the president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, for 10 years, to help them, to try to get South Africa and Africa to a position where they could play their rightful role in the world economic environment. You see, I'm the kind of guy that I don't like to do one thing. I like to do a lot of different things. Now, I can't multitask like Lolita can. She can do 3 or 4 things at one time. But I take them one at a time, sequentially. But I really think that it's the kind of book that I hope it's going to be inspirational. I hope that when people read it, they will feel empowered like I did when Madame La Savage told me, Frank, you can be anything you want to be. So the journey is one that I invite you to join me on. I hope you like it, and thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm going to go sit over here. I'm very happy to sign books for people. You can buy books here. Antoine, bring the little square up here. And Mayor Pavia, thank you very much. Thank you.
doing